Alois Ellie Turner is a teenager in Cornwall and a lover of the 60s music and fashion. She has a room full of fashion magazines, and she dances and appreciates her dresses, forming a name for her brand. While she dances, she drops a picture of her mother and thinks about her. She receives a letter, making her happy, and tells her grandmother that she is going to London. She packs her luggage and her grandmother shows her a picture of her mother going to London for the first time. She offers her the picture, but Ellie refuses it and tells her grandmother to bring it when she's settled in London. Her grandmother tries to advise her as things aren't easy in London, but Ellie is positive about it. The next day she leaves and her grandmother tells her to call if she cannot handle things in London. She gives Ellie the picture and she leaves for the airport. She gets a taxi and tells the driver that London has changed, unlike when she visited with her mother. She also adds that she came to study at the London College of Fashion, as she likes to design clothes. The driver is a stalker and a pervert, creeping Ellie out, and she lies that she wants to shop just to alight from the taxi. Ellie meets with her roommate, Jocasta, who walks Ellie into the room. The two introduce themselves, and Jocasta, being from Manchester City, is not familiar with Cornwall. The two have something in common. Both their mothers are dead, although Ellie's mother took her life when she was 7 due to mental illness. Jocasta introduces Ellie to her friends but makes fun of her clothes, which Ellie made herself. It turns out Jocasta is a jerk who tries to steal the spotlight from Ellie. She also marks all her foods in the freezer, warning Ellie to keep them off. Later on, the girls have a drink and go out to the club. Ellie becomes uncomfortable when Jocasta makes a shrewd joke at her expense, and she leaves for the toilet. On her way, she feels like she is being followed by an unknown man. The girls also go to the toilet and they make fun of Ellie. While she listens, Jocasta makes a joke about slashing Ellie's wrists before Christmas. She leaves the club sad and notices a store on her way home. She sees a weird man coming out and they make eye contact. The man smiles at her and leaves while she looks on. The student has a party, making Ellie unable to sleep. She meets John at the party and he is nice to her. The next day, Ellie is late for class, but fortunately, she arrives before she is marked absent. She calls her grandmother and lies about having fun in London. While on the phone, she finds out that there is a room for lease in Soho and decides to rent it. She meets Ms. Collins, who gives her the rules to follow. Ms. Collins shows her the room and Ellie loves it. Ellie tells her that if she could live in any place, she would live in London in the 60s. Ellie moves in immediately, settles in, and plays music till she sleeps. She has a vivid dream about being in 1960. She enters the Café de Paris. Her cloak is taken from her and she sees a blonde woman called Sandy. When she looks in the mirror, Sandy insists that she wants to see the owner of the cafe, and states that she wants to be the cafe's new headline act, although the waiter thinks she can't start at Café de Paris. The waiter tells her to talk to Jack and she tells him that she is a singer, but she can also dance. She demonstrates her dancing skills and Jack dances with her. Jack tells her that she's already a star and wants to get her a gig during the week. Jack punches a man that called Sandy a pleasure giver and they both run out. Jack kisses her on the lips and neck while they escape. Jack drives her home and asks her out again tomorrow. Sandy enters her room and sleeps, waking Ellie from the dream. The next day, Ellie sketches out the dress design inspired by Sandy. John admires her design. She tells him that Sandy is someone she knows from 60s and speaks to her. Jocasta is jealous and goes to check what she is drawing. Jocasta notices a love bite on her neck and Ellie remembers Jack's kiss. On her way home, John meets with her and tells her that he likes her drawings. He also returns her drink and asks if she has any plans for the night. Ellie remembers that Sandy made plans with Jack and she refuses John's proposal. Ellie goes to bed with the expectation of being Sandy once more. In her dream, Sandy opens the door for Jack and he takes her to a club for an audition. Sandy sings and Ellie watches on. The bar owner likes her voice and Sandy is happy to sing there. Sandy wants to get new outfits and asks Jack to be her manager after they make love to each other. The next morning, Ellie's alarm wakes her up. She is inspired by Sandy's sense of fashion and dyes her hair blonde. She calls her grandmother and she is happy that she's finding herself in London. She also shows their instructor her sketch and tries to make a similar dress. The instructor likes both her idea and hair, although Jocasta thinks it's old-fashioned. Ellie shops for dresses just like Sandy and notices the club Sandy auditioned and gets a job there. A weird old man sights her in the pub and looks at her with intent. When she returns home, the man follows her and asks her about her mother. She tells him that her mother is dead and the man says that she might, as most of them are dead. Ellie gets scared and runs away, almost getting hit by a car. Ellie returns home and Ms. Collins fails to recognize her. She identifies herself and says that she wants something like the 60s. Ellie plays the song Sandy auditioned and sleeps, transporting to 1960. She looks around for Sandy but couldn't find her. She goes upstairs and sees her in a room. Sandy seems unhappy and breaks the mirror with her hand. Jack meets with her and takes Sandy downstairs, introduces her to Mr. Pointer and tries to give her to him. Sandy tries to leave but she feels trapped. Pointer follows Sandy to her apartment and tries to touch her. Ellie shouts at him and her alarm rings. She wakes up to see Pointer and she gets scared, causing her to finally wake up. While she designs her clothes, she hears strange voices and decides to destroy the designs she made. Her instructor calms her down and tells her to believe in herself. Ellie begins her shift at the pub and John goes there to get a drink and to also see her, killing two birds with one stone. John asks her how she is doing and Ellie says that she's just overwhelmed with the moment. John tells her that he is a good listener if she ever needs anyone to talk to. Her grandmother calls her and asks if everything is fine. Ellie tells her that everything is fine, but her grandmother thinks otherwise as she could sense that something is wrong in her voice. She finally confesses to her grandmother, telling her the truth. As she drops the call, the weird old man, Lindsay, asks if everything is all right. Ellie is surprised that he knows her name and he informs her that he knows all the pretty girls in the city. Lindsay gives her sketch back and walks away. A waiter comes out and asks if Lindsay is bothering her. He reveals that Lindsay was a ladies' man back in the days. Not long after, Ellie asks Carol if she believes in ghosts. Ellie is now scared to return home. On getting home, the music player plays on its own and Jack enters to drag her out. Sandy starts getting pimped out to men, while Ellie watches on. One day, Sandy has blurry visions and a police officer advises her to get out of prostitution while she can. The officer tells her that she is too good for that and asks her to look in the mirror. Ellie is in the mirror and begs Sandy to look at her, but she refuses. She breaks the mirror with her hand, hugs Sandy, and wakes up. She has flashes of Sandy's memories. She gets scared and leaves the room. She returns to the room and is frightened when she sees scary people in her room. Unable to sleep, Ellie calls John to meet her at school. John asks her if she has plans for the night and invites her to a Halloween party. They attend the party and Jocasta spots them. She offers them drinks, and John dances with Ellie after taking the drink. Ellie sees Sandy being ogled by different men. She follows Sandy and John runs after her. He offers to help her and Ellie wishes she was like everybody else. John tells her that he's glad she's different and they kiss. They both run to Ellie's home in the rain and they make out. While making out, Ellis sees Jack strangling Sandy, causing her to panic. She also sees Jack about to stab Sandy and she screams, alerting Ms. Collins. She knows Ellie has a male visitor and threatens to call the police, while John tries to escape. Ellie sees Sandy covered in blood, but her vision disappears when Ms. Collins switches on the light. She asks if John hurts her and she says no. The next morning, Ellie asks Ms. Collins if Sandy lived in her apartment. Ms. Collins states that lots of girls lived there, but most of them don't use their real names. Ellie asks about Sandy's death, but Ms. Collins explains that everyone has died in every room in London. Ellie continues to hear voices and see Jack. Ellie completes her dress and she hallucinates Sandy telling her, "You know where to find me." Ellie gets scared and leaves the room. John tries to stop her, but she continues to run. While she runs, she hallucinates Sandy's dead body and Jack. She sees a police station and stops by to report Sandy's murder. The officers do not believe her and they ask her if she takes drugs. She tells them that all the places in her visions are all real, and she is sure that something bad happened to Sandy. The police officer asks if there has been a history of mental illness in her family, but Ellie insists that she knows the killer as she believes Lindsay is Jack. The police continue to make fun of her stories, but a policewoman believes her and tells her she will look into it. Ellie searches for Sandy's death being reported in the newspaper but finds nothing. John meets her and apologizes if he did anything wrong. Although Ellie says John will think she is crazy, she tells him about her visions and John agrees to help her in the search. After John steps out, Ellie sees the scary men again and runs away. She decides to stop running and brings out her scissors, but she almost stabs Jocasta. However, John stops her. Ellie leaves the library and goes to the pub to find Sandy. While running, the scary man pulls her back from following Sandy. She breaks away and finally catches up with Sandy, but she pushes her away, causing her to fall. When she wakes up, she sees Lindsay and follows him into the pub. Ellie approaches Lindsay and records their conversation. She asks if he knows Sandy and Lindsay claims everyone knew her. He says he knew all the girls and he wanted to protect them. He further states Sandy was good but she ended up like the rest. Ellie tells him that she knows he killed Sandy, but Lindsay says that Sandy isn't good as she appears and she brought whatever happened to her on herself. He claims that while he tried to look for her, she did not want to be found. Lindsay is tired of the questioning and decides to. Lindsay confesses that Alex killed Sandy and a moving vehicle hits him while he talks. Carol confirms that Lindsay is the police officer in her visions and not Jack. Ellie feels sad and calls her grandmother. She tells her grandmother that she can't stay another night in London and spots John. She asks John to take her home and he promises to drive her. She returns to her apartment to pack her things and tells John to check on her if she's not back in 15 minutes. Ellie informs Miss Collins to tell her that she will be leaving. She offers Ellie a cup of tea and Ellie apologizes for leaving. Ms. Collins tells her that a lady police officer came to ask about her well-being, as Ellie has reported that a girl died in the room. Ms. Collins confesses that she is Sandy, just as Ellie sees her name. Sandy explains that what Ellie saw was actually how she stabbed Jack 100 times. She also lured all the men she had been given to, killed them, and buried them behind the walls of the room. Ellie apologizes for telling the police, and Ms. Collins tells her not to worry as she has already poisoned her tea. Ms. Collins wants to make Ellie's death look like suicide. John is worried about Ellie and goes in to look for her. Ellie tries to stop her, but Ms. Collins knocks her down. Ms. Collins stabs him while Ellie groans in pain after having her palm slashed. Ellie tries to climb the stairs and Sandy gives chase while her apartment burns. On getting to her room, Ellie is hunted by the ghosts of the dead men, telling her to kill Ms. Collins and save them. Ms. Collins enters the room and sees the ghosts. Jack's spirit slaps her and Collins tries to kill herself after feeling guilty. because she does not want to go to prison. She tells Ellie to save herself and John while she burns with the building. The fire department arrives and saves them. Soon after, Ellie achieves success as she showcases her dresses from the 60s during the end-of-the-year fashion show. Everyone congratulates her and she sees her mother in the mirror. Her grandmother and John, now her boyfriend, congratulate her. She then sees Sandy in the mirror, who throws her a kiss in the end.